Good morning. If everybody could please take their seats. Good morning. We have a few recreation fans, I see. What an amazing turnout. Thank you all for being here. I am Jonathan Bowles, the Executive Director of the Center for an Urban Future. We have so many folks here. Thanks for coming. Thanks to the many people that are tuning in to our live stream right now. In case you are new to us, the Center for an Urban Future is a think tank focused on creating a stronger and more equitable economy in New York and expanding economic opportunity for all New Yorkers. Our research raises the visibility of issues, opportunities, and ideas that are important for New York's future, but which have been underappreciated or overlooked for too long by public officials. Even more importantly, our work consistently sparks new policies and investments in New York. We've done this on a variety of issues, whether it's our work on public libraries, CUNY, low-income entrepreneurship, or the arts. We've also done it with our recent research on parks and open space, including our most recent research highlighting opportunities to develop new revenue streams to pay for parks. With today's forum and with the forthcoming report, we're hoping to play a similar catalytic role with another long overlooked opportunity, the opportunity to restore public recreation as essential civic infrastructure. As our forthcoming report will document, recreation once accounted for nearly 1/3 of the New York City Parks budget. Today, it represents about 5.3%. Similarly, full-time recreation staff in the city have fallen from almost 2,000 to 659. These shifts have taken place over decades, many decades. In 2011, the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation even erased recreation from its public-facing name, shortening it to NYC Parks. More recently, there have been positive developments, including this week's opening of the Shirley Chisholm Recreation Center in Flatbush. And we know that there are more exciting announcements on the way. But our research suggests that many challenges remain, and that years of underinvestment has left the city's recreation system struggling to realize its full potential, with fewer programs than from before the pandemic, staffing shortages, and aging rec centers, field houses, and pools that aren't meeting demand. Our forthcoming report will make the case that now is the time to reverse those trends and to put the rec back in parks and recreation. Indeed, at a time when an alarming number of New Yorkers are struggling with health and mental health issues, recreation should be part of the solution. I'm super excited to delve into these issues today and to hear ideas for how the city can expand public recreation. A big thanks to all of our speakers that are here today. Thank you. Special thanks to our Parks Commissioner, our new Parks Commissioner, for being here, Tricia Shimamura. Thank you, Commissioner. I know you probably saw that on the agenda and on the invitation, we also had planned to have City Council member Ty Hankerson, the chair of the Parks Committee, here today. Unfortunately, his office just called a few minutes ago and said he's unable to make it because of another commitment. So apologies for that, but we're excited to move forward with a one-on-one fireside chat with the commissioner. I also want to thank all the amazing parks and recreation advocates and leaders that are in the room today. Thanks so much for all of your work. Also, a big thanks to our friends at New Yorkers for Parks for all the great work they do. Last but not least, I would like to thank the Helmsley Charitable Trust for making today's event possible and for supporting our forthcoming report on public recreation. And I'm delighted we'll be hearing from one of the key people behind the Helmsley Charitable Trust's commitment to supporting public recreation, Emily Fiddock, an Associate Program Officer for the Helmsley Charitable Trust's New York City program. Please join me in extending a warm welcome for Emily.
morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming today. I'm Emily Fiddock, the Associate Program Officer for the New York City program at Helmsley Charitable Trust. We are so pleased to support the Center for an Urban Future to discuss their upcoming exciting new research report on recreation in our city. At Helmsley, our green space portfolio is part of our greater New York City health work, driven by the evidence that access to healthy green space improves health and mental health. We make grants that increase active and healthy green space across our city. It's one thing to make more green space available, and it's equally important to facilitate activity and engagement in that green space to make it truly accessible for New York City residents to fully utilize and care for it. Over the years, some of the infrastructure and investment that supported recreation has deteriorated, and today you'll hear some of the best ideas about how to bring it back. Helmsley would like to thank all the panelists here today and all of the incredible green space and recreation leaders whose work we learn and benefit from. Also, a special thank you to the new Parks Commissioner, Tricia Shimamura, for being here today for this conversation. Lastly, congratulations and thank you to Jonathan Bowles, Eli Dvorkin, and the whole staff from the Center for an Urban Future for all their thoughtful and timely research and for putting on this event today. This conversation couldn't have come at a better time, and we're excited that this research report can give some grounding as well as some creative ideas on how to reinvigorate recreation in New York City. And so, without further ado, I'll hand it off to Eli Dvorkin for today's first panel discussion. Thank you.
Yeah. Maybe that looks great. Good morning, everyone. Commissioner, thank you so much for being here with us today. I feel like you truly need no introduction in this room, but just if everyone could join me in a round of applause for our new Parks Commissioner, Tricia Shimamura. So grateful to have you with us today. You know, I'm excited for this conversation for lots of reasons, not least of which because I'm a true lover and believer in public recreation, but also because I know you are as well. And it feels like a really opportune moment at the beginning of your tenure as commissioner and with the new administration to really talk about why public recreation matters for New York. So I wanted to begin by asking you a little bit about this. You know, our research report documents the really alarming rise in mental and physical health challenges that New York City is experiencing today. Growing mental health challenges, persistent physical health disparities that are particularly pronounced in many of our city's lowest income communities, challenges that we believe can't be solved only through medical interventions, but where it strikes us that recreation can play perhaps an increasingly important role in helping New York City confront and overcome some of these challenges. At the same time, you know, as the weather finally releases its grip and we feel the first breath of spring in the air, I think so many New Yorkers are actually thinking again about how much joy spending time outside gives us. But as our research documents, those experiences of recreation are not equitably distributed across the city. That just because we have facilities doesn't mean New Yorkers are using them. And in many cases, the facilities that we have are in desperate need of renewal and new investment. So I guess I wanted to start by asking you, you know, as New Yorkers are confronting these twin crises of public health challenges, but also the affordability challenge that is on everybody's minds today, what role should free and low-cost public recreation play in our city going forward? And what are you most excited about when you think about the future of recreation?
Sure. Well, if you would allow me to, I just want to say thank you again for inviting me to be here. I think this is day 10 or something. I've lost, I don't honestly know what day of the week it is, but it was a no-brainer to say yes to something like this. And admittedly, I was maybe a little nervous walking in the door, and then all of a sudden realized that I was amongst friends. And it was really nice to see so many people who I've partnered with, my neighbors, my comrades who I have linked arms with when I was a community board member, fighting for a waterfront space, greenways, fighting for open space. So it's really nice to see so many of you here, and it's a real honor to be here. I think I'm partially in my role because I got to work with so many of you And even those who are in other boroughs who I haven't gotten to work with as closely, I've been watching you and I've been inspired by you, and I'm just so excited to kind of take this journey together. And I want to just tell you also, before I get too into the weeds on this, is that it was a real honor to just hear the Helmsley Foundation say my name. My last name is very Japanese, and really my family, both sides, my Puerto Rican side and my Japanese side, nobody's gone to college. Nobody has really worked in government before. I ran for office many years ago, and I was told many times to change my last name, that like a Shimamura would never be something that somebody could even pronounce correctly. And it's so much of, I think, why this administration really excited me and why I'm so honored to be in this role. Because with this mayor and this administration, he really ran on this idea that government should work for everybody, that recreation should be for everybody, that public service, public institutions, infrastructure, and I do believe Parks and Rec is essential, vital infrastructure that is not a luxury, that should be an absolute priority, that should be for everybody. It doesn't matter, Matt, your last name or your citizenship or your zip code. And I think that's the real kind of foundation. And so it's an honor to be here. Thank you for saying my last name. And thank you so much again for allowing me to kind of be a part of what I think is going to be a really wonderful time for Parks and Recreation. It's very true that for me, and on a very personal level, recreation is part of our daily lives. I have 2 small children, 3 and 6 years old, who are going to go back to Asphalt Green this summer for summer camp. But on every weekend, truly every Saturday, particularly in this cold weather, we're in a rec center. We're swimming. We were doing National Girls Athletic Day we were playing volleyball in Kwame Ture in the Bronx this weekend. We were, they are so excited about Rory Wilkins Pool because it's 3 feet deep, so we can stand on our tippy toes there. We really love and live kind of what recreation means. And so to start, I'd say that, to use definitions. Recreation doesn't happen just in rec centers, although I want to talk about that. It doesn't happen. It's not just, the 37 centers that we have. It's not it's not just our Shape Up programs, which are offered in, I think, 85 locations throughout the city, if not more. It's not just our kind of Alley Pond ropes course, which is kind of incredible. It's in the playground associates that are in over, I think, 70 different playgrounds throughout the summertime. It's aquatics programs. It's our ranger program. It's our senior service programs. And most importantly, particularly in this room, it's also the partnerships that we have and the partnerships with all of you who extend the reach of recreation. So I think I kind of think of like capital R versus little r. And like when we're talking about capital R, Parks and Recreation, that is inclusive of everybody who's offering any sort of service, be it like a media course, homework help, an active athletic course, swimming, a connection to nature in terms of like a structured walk through one of our natural areas, and so much more. And so that, if parks are essential infrastructure and vital infrastructure, as my predecessors have put out, then I'd say recreation puts life into that infrastructure. And recreation is what activates it. It's what connects us. It creates community. It, of course, increases health, as you've alluded to. It is absolutely connected to public health, but it's also what makes kind of living in these dense urban settings possible. It's really where you find community. It's really where you find connection, both to each other, but to the natural world. inside of our recreation centers is really magic. And even if it's aging infrastructure, I will always say that it's magic. I see it every Saturday when my kids are learning how to swim. And I saw it this weekend when I saw a completely packed gymnasium with ladies over 40 doing double dutch right next to volleyball, next to soccer, and next to basketball, all in the same space. It's really quite spectacular. And you also see it when you take a walk with our rangers through in Woodhill Park or another area. So absolutely, it's essential. Absolutely, you think about infrastructure and you think about what connects infrastructure to the people. That's what recreation is. Absolutely, we should be investing more in it. And at a very personal level, starting from a very personal place, I view my job as to make sure that, to the best of our abilities, our programs, our infrastructure, the services that are vital to New York are reaching every New Yorker, regardless of who you are or where you come from.
Thank you, Commissioner. I mean, it's so heartening and exciting to hear. It sounds like we have a lot in common, not just our love of parks, but also my great-grandfather was advised to change our last name to Dork King.
Oh.
I think he made a good choice. But it's sort of miraculous that, after all these centuries that, I still have a D and a V and we never had to change it.
Probably a good choice.
Probably ultimately a good choice. But we have another thing in common, which is I have an almost 3-year-old and an almost 6-year-old at home. So I know
yes.
right where you are.
I had a different jacket this morning. It got covered in syrup. Yeah.
Can really relate to that. Yes, it's hard to have to, put on the apron before I make breakfast on an event morning. But I want to actually ask you something about that last piece that we have in common. So, one of the many amazing kind of recreational opportunities in our parks is the city's summer day camp program.
Yeah.
And I've said to many folks, it is the best deal in New York City, $575 for an entire summer, 7 weeks, full-time, playing and and experiencing recreation both indoors and outdoors. I can't think of a better deal in New York. What we've written about before and will also be part of our upcoming report is just the opportunity to potentially scale up something that could be such a lifeline for working families. And, I know firsthand, I'm figuring out right now what we're going to do over the summer. And it fills me with terror knowing that we have to figure out these couple of months without, childcare, without any ways to offset the costs. Yeah. And it is one of our biggest costs as a family. So I mentioned this not only to kind of elevate this idea of expanding summer day camp, but to kind of connect the dots to this the mayor's broader affordability agenda. And I guess I wanted to ask you sort of a next step here. When you think about the role that public recreation can play in the affordability agenda, what are some of the ideas that maybe resonate in terms of next steps? And how do we make sure that more New Yorkers who live in this city with, in many cases, proximity to recreation infrastructure and programs, but who may not be participating today, how do we help more New Yorkers experience the free and low-cost public recreation that we have?
Absolutely. So I'd say that, first and foremost, I said it to my team internally. I'll say it probably many times over the next several years. Parks, New York City Parks and Recreation is the agency of affordability. It is just straight up. I kind of was talking to my team about the reasons why this administration, why try to step up and lead our agency in this moment where we have very tight budgets and where there are some extremely large challenges. And I said that when we talk about this mayor, this administration that's talking about how to make our city affordable, livable, how to allow for New York City families to thrive. Yes, there's a large focus on housing, but the sense of belonging, the sense of joy, the sense of, again, government working for everybody and making it as easy and accessible as possible, that's Parks and Rec. That's really us. And our summer camp is just one example, but I'll also gently say that while our summer camp is, yes, the best gig in town, it's true, Jordan. While our summer camp is the best gig in town, that's also not the only place that New York City kids are interacting with Parks and Rec over the summertime. Go to any one of our pools and go around 12 o'clock. And you will see hundreds of kids who come line up because we work with DOE to give them summer meals throughout the summertime. And oftentimes our kids show up when the pools open up, they swim for hours, they come out, they eat their lunch right there, oftentimes the only meal, consistent meal that they're getting that day, and then they go right back into that pool until the pools close. That is another way that we're providing completely free care for kids throughout the entire summertime. Go to Shirley Chisholm or any other, or Asser Levy or any of our other locations where we provide a free after school. Right now, actually, speaking of which, I was just, again, at Kwame Ture just this last weekend, so it's top of mind. They have free drop-in programs where I asked them, their average age of kids who are walking in are somewhere between the ages of 8 and 16 years old. They come by themselves to the centers after school every single day, and they don't know that that's a safe place that they can be. This is where we have homework help, media labs. They also just have safety there. They know that there's adults there. They know that there's a warm place to hang out, that there's somebody there to provide them some structure, some engagement, some after school play, and they're there constantly. So, it's a little bit of a network. If you want to join our summer camp, it's amazing and it's incredible, and everybody should come to the end of year summer camp day because we have all these blow ups and water, and it's kind of like a zombie apocalypse movie if it's just all kids running around like crazy. It's so much fun. But I'd say that our pools, our after school every day that we provide in our centers, our drop-in programs, our playground associates who are in arguably recreation deserts where you don't have facilities nearby. We just put adults who are trained to work with kids in these playgrounds to keep a lookout for kids who need some consistent interaction every day throughout the summertime. What a gift. What an amazing way to make sure that our parks and our recreational areas are safe spaces for kids, all for free, just completely no cost. And to your question about how do we make sure more New Yorkers are aware of it, that's on me. Quite honestly, I think that's my job in part to ensure that these programs and these services are accessible to different communities, different languages, that they are culturally sensitive, that we are being honest about ourselves, about where we're putting our playground associates, where we're putting our additional shape-up resources, and making sure that we are expanding and flexing our outreach, that we're not just going back to our trusted partners, many of whom are in this room, and I love all of you very much, but I want you to tell me where we're not. And I want us to look very carefully at where we're not to make sure that we are being honest and being kind of strategic about where we go from here. But it is our summer camp, but it's also so much more. And that's kind of that kind of big R sort of question, because the truth is that we offer so many different types of programs to meet people where they are and to really serve families in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah, that's great. Really encouraging to hear, Commissioner. And I think our research certainly supports this idea that these programs that are so important have room to grow, that there's opportunities there. I mean, I think I maybe failed to mention, the summer day camp program only has capacity right now to serve a few hundred families a year. In the past, the distant past, it was more. It was, thousands. But this requires resources. It clearly requires staffing, also space issues. Rec centers are in many cases, stretched to the brim. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the space component of this. And you mentioned also some of the rec deserts that we have in the city. Our report certainly surfaces some of those, from Mount Hope in the Bronx to South Ozone Park in Queens. There are some neighborhoods which have very few athletic facilities and recreational assets compared to others. And some of that does hinge on space. So I wanted to ask you a little bit more about this. Our research also shows that there are over probably $400 million is a conservative number in terms of $400 million of identified but kind of unmet state of good repair needs across rec infrastructure in the park system. Undoubtedly, though, that figure is just the tip of the iceberg, because there's so many needs that we don't know that won't even be surfaced without a full needs assessment, and then beginning to kind of peel away the layers of the onion and seeing it's way more than just a broken boiler or a roof replacement. The problems run deeper. So I guess I wanted to ask you a little bit more about, but it's not just rec centers. We have field houses in New York City, some of which have not been open to the public in decades. We've got, needs on our waterfront. We've got needs in terms of the athletic facilities, fields, that suffer a lot of wear and tear, in other facilities. and the need potentially for new facilities that may meet the changing needs of New Yorkers today, whether that's equivolley courts or facilities that can be used by older adults more accessibly, or playgrounds that constantly are in need of renovation and renewal. So I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the capital side of the equation. And you obviously know this firsthand from your work, both as Manhattan Commissioner and prior to that as well. Where do you see the greatest needs around capital investment? Where would you like to see the city make those investments going forward? We'd also talk a little bit about what the transformative impact has been, where those investments are made, including obviously Shirley Chisholm this week, which is such an exciting development. But we'd love to get your thoughts about integrating rec more deeply, potentially across the capital portfolio.
Sure. I mean, there's no secret here. I just invited everybody to go into a rec center. It's not going to take very long to go into a rec center and to realize that these are 100-year-old buildings. Truly over 100 years old in many cases. And in some ways it's beautiful and it's incredible to think about these stately, beautiful structures that have served the public for generations, but in a very real way, it's also extremely scary and easy to feel a little overwhelmed by the amount of capital need that a lot of these facilities are requiring in terms of upkeep and even just thinking about, again, the changing dynamics of community needs. 100 years ago, we weren't thinking about big basketball tournaments, and we weren't thinking about swim meets that require space for people to sit and watch, and lifeguard rooms, which we want to make sure our lifeguards are cared for, and we weren't thinking about those types of things. So even in thinking about a modern recreation center, and Shirley Chisholm is definitely that. Many of these spaces just simply can't necessarily accommodate it, and the cost is tremendous. But I think that the truth is that we do need a long-term capital plan. We do need, and I'm very excited that our agency is actually starting to undergo what will be another 10-year capital plan for recreation centers, which I'm excited to be a part of. The real fact is that we have about $1 billion that is currently promised and kind of in the pipeline to put out many new additional rec centers. And I think that I am personally so excited about Shirley because this is the first recreation center in over a decade, completely new build that came out, $141 million in a recreation desert. And that model, I personally am betting so much in this rec center because I need this to show other communities, to show our advocates, to show my colleagues in government what this can mean. And so Shirley is so important. Just to give you all a background, if you haven't been there, in Flatbush area where a recreation center has never been, we did a completely new build on parkland, 70,000 square feet, 3 or 4 floors, inclusive of an indoor pool, inclusive of after-school facilities in there, dance halls, and a state-of-the-art recreation weight room, a teaching kitchen, which is absolutely insane. Ina Garden would be so jealous. So many things in this incredible space, so many thoughtful nods towards Shirley Chisholm and the legacy that she has left in Brooklyn and in the entire city. So many ways that the building kind of pays tribute to Flatbush and the Brooklynites that have really been a part of this community for generations, for their entire lives. It's a real model for where I think we should be going. The truth is that we just need clear capital investment. We need additional funds. I'm excited about the $1 billion that we have going into this. We also have, just for the record, we have another $1 billion going into upgrading several of our pools around the entire city, which again, as I said, is a complement to our recreation centers and a sister kind of component to all of our recreation centers. So that's $2 billion of capital investment going in over the next, through 2029, I think is the range, maybe 2030, and more is needed. That's the hard part about these budgets, and I would gently say that for parks and recreation, it's funny, many municipalities don't actually have recreation and parks in the same agency. You see them kind of as separate agencies completely, and And it's interesting, but I personally am very proud of the fact that we get to be Parks and Rec, because again of this idea of this vital infrastructure that's living, that is so essential to us all. But I also think that in terms of how we manage that, there's not necessarily clear lines between our maintenance and operations staff and our recreation staff. Like we emphasize this a lot, but this is a little bit behind the scenes. But it's one team. And so if something goes wrong in one of our rec centers, if we need something fixed immediately, there's a very good chance it's our citywide team or our operations team that's stepping up to make those repairs and do that work. And obviously there's more to be done. But I'm personally betting on Shirley Chisholm. I'm betting on Mary Callie Dalton, which will be the next rec center that we open up this year, to demonstrate what it means to actually make serious capital investment in communities that have not had recreation before, and how this can transform communities.
Yeah, that's great to hear, Commissioner. I think one of the things that's so heartening to me about Shirley Chisholm, in addition to all the ways, as you mentioned, it so powerfully kind of pays tribute to such a legendary New Yorker, but also that it is a testament to some incredibly important but incredibly wonky and behind-the-scenes reforms in our capital process. The fact that, and Center for Urban Future has been writing about these issues for about a decade now, about we need to make sure that our capital dollars can stretch further and that these projects can be done more quickly and more efficiently. And Shirley Chisholm is an amazing example of that, as DDC receiving a design build authority to be able to do Shirley Chisholm as a design build project. It took about half the time that some parks bathrooms have taken historically to build the entire $141 million project, start to finish. So incredibly encouraging. There's much more work to be done to continue to improve the capital process, but it's a testament to what's possible with some of those reforms. And
to my incredible public community partners who are here, I know go regularly to community board meetings and talk to communities. This was a design build project that still was able to take in community input, still was able to be shaped by the community. You did not lose any of that personalization and that kind of personal touch, but was done in record time. This was amazing. Truly incredible. When I say less than 3 years of active construction for this massive structure, this incredible thing with a huge pool, that's unheard of. Design build, and still with community input, still hand in hand with the community, still building something that feels personal and connected and designed for this community, all in record timing. It's incredible.
It's really amazing to see, and obviously something we need much more of in New York City. I wanted to ask you a little bit also about the programming side of it, a little bit more about this. One of the findings in our report shows that the total number of program sessions recreation program sessions offered in parks has declined about 45% since 2019. Significant decline. I think key factors there is our research services, our staffing levels, the funding to support that, and also the infrastructure as well. But I wanted to actually ask, and certainly we're maybe the ones to come out there and say the solution there is we need to invest in parks and maintenance and operations and staffing levels and recreation. But what I actually wanted to ask you about is one other piece of the puzzle as we see it in the research, which is, and you mentioned it earlier, and there's so many folks in the room that are doing this work, which is the nonprofit partners that help to, in some cases, deliver programs where the city has struggled potentially to be able to fully kind of fund those needs. So I want to ask you a little bit more about what are some of your thoughts around better leveraging, harnessing the energy of the folks in this room, of the nonprofit partners citywide that are in many cases the frontline folks delivering recreation programs to New Yorkers using our assets, our parks and our recreation facilities in many cases, in some cases with license agreements, in other cases doing it in much more kind of ad hoc and fluid ways. I'd love to get your thoughts about, we as a Center for Urban Future would love to see a deeper level of investment in parks' own capacity to deliver recreation programs, but I'd love to get your thoughts about what more can we be doing as a city to leverage and harness our nonprofit partners to help in this effort?
Yeah. I think you really said it there. We are providing around 20,000 events and offerings per year through the Parks Department, but we know that that's just simply not enough. And it's truly our partners, many of you who are in this room are the ones who are able to who know your communities best, who know the needs, who live in your communities. And so you're able to provide, again, community specific, culturally sensitive programming that really meets the needs of the neighbors that you're servicing, which is absolutely beautiful. And so the ability to formalize those relationships, the ability for us to partner together to make sure that we are aligned, that you're getting support from us, but be it in identifying spaces and multi-purpose play areas that you want to do your programming in, if you want to do Tai Chi or working with us more formally to provide opportunities inside of our recreation centers or through other facilities that we have. I think that all of that is needed. This is really a network. And so under the last kind of two administrations, I think both Commissioner Donahue and Commissioner Iris Rodriguez-Rosa, they expressed a real desire to help our partners and to extend out a hand to make sure that our park partners know how vital they are to this whole network of services and recreation that we provide. I think that the idea of creating more opportunities for formalizing those arrangements, making sure that we are kind of thinking critically of the resources that we currently provide, and thinking through what other ways that we can support is something that I'm deeply committed to doing as well. So I'm looking forward. I mean, I started out this way for a reason. I started out by saying that the people in this room, I know how absolutely essential the services they're providing are. I think that they are our spokespeople also to communities, that they are the ones who are going to be, you are all the ones that are going to be the way that we reach out to new people. And you are really going to be our teachers in so many ways when it comes to thinking through what is additional recreation, what does additional programming look like in these communities, and how are we being honest and making sure that we're reaching as many New Yorkers as we want to reach.
Well, on that incredibly encouraging note, would everybody join me in a round of applause for Commissioner Tricia Shimomura? Commissioner, thank you so much. We're thrilled to have you and looking forward to partnering with you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. You'll see your name on a chair. Have a spot. All right. All right, welcome everyone. We will just get right into it. Maybe just take a moment to make sure your microphone is close to you, especially so our folks who are tuning into the live stream can hear you all. Let's make sure the room is still warm after that wonderful conversation with the commissioner. Good morning, everyone. Not bad, not bad. I figured a rec crowd, you know you're going to get a pretty good call and response. I didn't bring my whistle today, though, but if there's any, if we lose the audience, I hope somebody can jump in. Well, welcome all of you. I won't give extensive biographies of our amazing panelists. I'll just mention who's up here with me. And in your programs, there's a QR code. You can scan it and read more about our amazing panelists. So let me just kind of briefly mention who I'm joined by today, and then we'll get right into the conversation. So to my right is Sharon Levy, the Senior Vice President of Public Affairs at the YMCA of Greater New York. Uday Tambar, the CEO and President of New York Junior Tennis and Learning. Nazinga Prescott, Founder and Executive Director of the Prescott Institute for Sports, Teamwork, and Education. Jordan Brackett, CEO of Asphalt Green. Andrew So, Executive Director of South Bronx United. And Caitlin Krause, Founder and Executive Director of Rising Tide Effect. Welcome, all of you, and join me in a round of applause for amazing panelists. Thank you so much for being here. So I wanted to start with something that the commissioner was talking about. She really spoke so eloquently and powerfully about the role that all of you play in this ecosystem, and we want to dive into those issues today. But I wanted to kind of first begin with a little more of the context for why we're all here today. Now, maybe this room doesn't need any convincing, but we know that there's folks here who are policymakers, who are staffers for folks in government, considering ideas for the new mayoral administration, where they can kind of have an impact and support the needs of New Yorkers. And certainly, if you look at the data, it's not clear to me that there's been a consensus that public recreation is a priority for New York City. Our research shows that over the decades, many decades now, the rec focus of Parks and Rec has receded over time, despite all the important work that's still happening up until this moment. And that I think more broadly, it's not always been clear to me that policymakers have seen the connections between public recreation and mental health and physical health and academic performance and solving for so many of the inequities that exist across New York City today. But I know that all of you believe in that mission and do that work every day. So I wanted to start by asking you, from where you all sit, what does recreation make possible in New York City that other interventions often can't? And why should policymakers care about expanding public recreation in this moment right now? And I'd open it up to all of you. Feel free to jump in.
Giving me a mic is a bad thing for you. Yeah. Hi. First off, I really want to thank Cuff for gathering us all together here. This is, for lack of a better word, recreation is life. Right? I know it's cheesy, it's a bit of a soundbite, but it's true, right? So the idea that recreation is a form of preventive health, right? It keeps you moving, which keeps your mental health in check, which keeps all of the other things flowing from there. And so policymakers need to pay attention to recreation and that sort of seed, because it is what keeps all of the other things in check, right? So the affordability crisis is a thing because of all of the other pieces that lead to that. And so if people are healthy and they are able to produce, children are able to go to school and learn better and be more active, their mental health is in a better place, they're physically better off, healthcare costs go down, productivity goes up. And so it's really sort of at the foundation of everything else we've been talking about.
Sure, but folks want to jump in and feel free.
I see, along with what Eli and Sharon were saying about recreation and sports being a equalizer from health perspective, mental health, definitely academics. I see it as a builder of strong character and the rigor of sport and also the competitive nature of sports and recreation is very important for youth. And I think it's one that's always overlooked in the conversation of government. But in my experience and from my view, it's like aiming for high performance through sport has a lot of consequential characteristics for students and young people. You'll see that 94% of C-suite women attribute their skill in sport, their ability to lead from their competitive sport experience. And so I think that's a huge part of sport that's not always addressed, recognized, valued. And I think, as Eli was saying, it's a multi-pronged solution for a lot of the inequities that our cities face, especially marginalized groups, lower income groups, underrepresented groups. And I would love to talk more about how that applies also for non-traditional sports like fencing and tennis, but how that access is very limited because of cost, but also a lot of other factors that we can get more into.
I'm happy for folks who want to weigh in more just on the what rec can do, and I'll open it up also just to ask about where some of the challenges lie in expanding access to recreation. And
right.
we'd love to get you in
just
on that.
in terms of what it can do, I mean, Asphalt Green, our tagline is sports, fitness, and play for all. And all people of all abilities, all backgrounds, but we particularly said play. People think of play as a frivolous thing, but play is how children learn. Play is how people build grit. It's how people build resistance. It's how people build community. It's how people come together. And whether it's in our community sports leagues or in the free older adult programming that we have, or the recess programs that we have in our school, or the Parks Commissioner's kids at our summer camp, the people who participate in this recreation are learning to be better citizens. And particularly at the time where, frankly, you have a divided country, even the divided city, people listen to different news, watch different TV. Sports is one of those things that brings people together. If Sharon can say something cheesy, I will as well. The soccer ball is agnostic about who's kicking it. And you can all come together on the soccer field. And it's a unifier. in a way that others aren't. We don't have enough institutions that bring people together.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan.
If I could just add on the rec side, I think it's becoming even more important right now. There's a lot of parents in the room. You're talking about your 3 and 6 year old, and I got 3 kids, and they're always on the screens, and we're stuck in our apartments too. I want to get them outside, get them running around. We know how important that is for their mental health, social, emotional health, and it's just growing and growing as kids are getting used to spending all the time staring at the screens and then talking to their friends over Minecraft like blocks away. So as I think investing more and encouraging kids to get outside, experience that, it really can open up their the worldview and make them feel healthier and see the value. So I think these times more than ever, it's important for us to be getting kids outside to really experience recreation, experience our parks.
Just building on what my colleagues are saying, public health is really an upstream, recreation is really an upstream public health intervention. And so when you have multiple crises or problems hitting at once, you want to invest in something that tackles multiple fronts. And rec provides an opportunity for social cohesion, for movement, for stress relief, all within a single footprint.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, please.
I think just to be comprehensive, I'll also comment and maybe answer your next question a little bit as well too. I think one of the things you meant, I don't know if you mentioned, is the whole addresses loneliness and isolation. And that's especially what's nice about rec is an intergenerational component of it. We are all dealing with young people, but it's also scalable because you can deal with older adults and adults as well. And I think that's the nice thing about recreation, right? I think some of the challenges for us is that, we're all talking about the 3 and the 6 year olds. And I think the data shows that when kids reach about 13 years old, 70% of them stop playing recreational sports. And it's a cliff, right? Because at this age, parents are bringing them around and you have access. So what are some of the challenges? In New York, what's one of the challenges is wintertime. It's like an accordion, right? In summer, you have all this space. I mean, you don't have enough space, but you have space. Wintertime, you even have less space. So what's the access during wintertime for all these sports? I mean, our number of sites shrinks by over a third in terms of parks and schoolyards during the wintertime. And it's more expensive, and when can you access that? I think the second thing is also staffing. I think for some of us, right, when you're talking about serving low-income communities, you're talking about kids that don't have access to this infrastructure, and what brings it to life is staff, but then you're also competing for-profit entities as well, right? So for us, the competition for us is like local tennis clubs. We can't pay as much as they can, right? So this challenge of what's the pipeline for staff that are mission-driven, but you still got to pay them, because that's what really brings all we were talking about, the life to the whole system.
Those are really helpful comments today, and I think we want to delve a little deeper into what those obstacles or challenges are to doing more rec. But I wanted to bring you in on the point you just mentioned. I mean, certainly not every New Yorker may have access or even familiarity or even awareness that fencing exists. And potentially even less so if you may be growing up in a lower income community where fencing may seem like it's a million miles away. Now, I'm particularly honored to have you join us today, Nzinga, because you're the first Olympian to ever be on a cuff panel. So truly incredible level of athletic achievement. Also, I think the first former cuff intern on a cuff panel too, but that's maybe not your number one your number one item on your resume. A fact that I was unaware of when we actually invited Nzinga. But I did want to ask you about this piece about, we often think, and we write a lot about workforce development and CUNY and pathways to good jobs at the Center for Urban Future. And we think a lot about the idea that if you can't see it, you can't be it. And we think about that often in terms of careers. But clearly that's also true when it comes to something like athletic achievements, when it comes to sports. And so I wanted to ask you about, in addition to some of the logistical barriers, if it's important for New Yorkers to have access to forms of recreation and forms of athletics that may be totally unfamiliar to them, how do we start to close that gap? Why is that important, and how do we start to close those gaps?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say one of my top reasons for closing the gap on a niche sport, a non-traditional sport, is it's a huge pipeline into elite networks, elite schools, and not even just colleges. With our kids at Peace, we see just the network of fencing, whether immediately at Peace or the broader fencing community or a broader Olympic, Paralympic community, it helps get into schools. at elementary school, middle schools. It's really amazing. And in my experience, that was also the case. Private schools were open to me, and scholarships were available to me growing up in Flatlands, East Flatbush, where the Shirley Chisholm Center, New Shirley, right? But I didn't grow up with recreation in my neighborhood. I always had to leave my neighborhood to get access, always, always. And so when I retired from fencing, I saw it as a huge justice issue that kids that I grew up fencing with in Manhattan and Chelsea had all this access to this life-changing sport, a developer of skill, of talent, of all these really important pieces like taking initiative, resilience, teamwork, all these, huge, how to focus, how to discipline, how self-control, all these really important things that are just kind of taken as a given in a lot of people's lives when you have the money to access sports. And so I wanted to bring that to my neighborhood where I knew we didn't have a lot of programming. But I think early introduction to non-traditional sports is very important because talking about barriers, not only is cost a barrier, space a barrier, but culture can be a barrier. And so I've found with Peace and like in my own experience, when you're working with kids, if you're working with a 12-year-old in middle school and you're going to the school and you're bringing fencing, you're in a huge battle with them about basketball, to be frank, basketball or football, but mostly a lot of basketball. And so when you're talking to a 12-year-old boy who's only seen basketball, it's really hard to convince him to try fencing. It's very hard. In talking about limited staff, limited money, limited time, that's not where we're going to direct our energy because it's proven unsuccessful so many times. And so starting earlier, middle school, with our Fencing in the Park program, we start kids at 5, just so they have some taste, dip your toe in the water, of this non-traditional thing. And in my mind and in my experience, I've seen kids, just because you're trying something new at an early age, now you're more open to trying any new thing, like you're not so limited in your scope because you tried something new and now you liked it and you didn't, I like something that's different. And so I think early introduction is very important, and organized pipelines to these programs, really touching communities that don't have the access, like Flatbush, East Flatbush, Canarsie, East New York. I'm obviously a Brooklyn girl, so I am partial. But there's so many pockets of New York City that are untapped, and so I have, we can talk more about solutions down the line. But I think these niche sports are a huge pipeline into something else, some other type of world, some exposure, and exposure is key for kids. And so sports are a major way to cross the bridge to that, what else is out there from what I was currently exposed to as, in my youth.
That's great.
Yeah, and I just want to, that's absolutely amazing work. And I want to also build on, there are several of us who work extensively on encouraging kids to swim right now, because swimming in particular, not enough kids know how to swim, particularly in lower income and Black and brown communities. And I want to talk a little bit about the solutions, and it's kind of an all hands on pool deck, if you'll pardon the pun. A couple of years ago, now Speaker Julie Menon and Councilmember Shekhar Krishnan worked on the bill to mandate free swim lessons for all second graders in underserved communities. We helped advise on the bill. Now, this wasn't funded through the city, so they wanted to create a pilot program to convince the city to fund it in baseline funding. So we got a grant from the Gray Foundation, and we worked with partners, including Sharon and the YMCA and Common Point Queens and the Parks Department, to get as many kids swimming as possible. And so I say that it required private philanthropy, it requires the work of city government, but there are a lot of other areas as well. There's also this classic kind of infrastructure problem, because we learned there wasn't enough funding for swim lessons, but there also weren't enough locations for them. And we developed a pool atlas. We got Department of Health data. They track every single pool in the city. So we put it together in a map so you can see where the pool deserts are, where the pools exist. And we discovered that there was this one pool in East Harlem at River East Elementary School. It was a 6-lane, 25-yard beautiful pool. in an area where a lot of kids don't know how to swim that had sat empty for a decade. There was a crack in it, and they couldn't fix it. In fact, they were using it to store furniture. And Asphalt Green hired architects on our own dime to figure out what it would take to renovate it. And then we lobbied the SCA and the DOE and got it renovated. And now the pool is open, and using grant funding, we're teaching every second grader in District 4 how to swim this year for free. And then not only that, we're also teaching some of the more advanced ones, more advanced lessons so that they can join our competitive swim team and maybe get into a great college using swim someday. So I say that is a great thing that we worked on, and we worked on it with people in this room, and it requires, again, private philanthropy, the city, and finding more locations as well.
Yeah, that's really inspiring, Jordan. I would love to ask more as we kind of delve into some of the solutions about what can we learn from that and build, how do we build on it. And Uday, I wanted to bring you in as well, thinking about sort of this connection between sports or recreation that may be widely popular in New York, but not accessible to everyone. And tennis feels like such an example of that. New York is clearly a tennis town. We've been home to the U.S. Open for, I don't know, half a century, longer for its predecessors, going back 100 years. But there's so many communities where it strikes me that, tennis is not seen as accessible or welcoming or something that makes sense, for them or their families. And so I want one theme I think that really has resonated in the research that we've done is whatever we're talking about here, it's not field of dreams. It's not if you build it, they will come, right? We can't just have the infrastructure. We need to plan the infrastructure and I guess the programming at the same time. So I wanted to get your thoughts about, if you have the ear of policymakers around why tennis, why more of it, but also what would it take to make sure that as we potentially build new tennis facilities, and across the board, our research shows that, New York has fewer of these athletic facilities, public facilities per capita than any other major city, from ice rinks to tennis courts, to volleyball, you name it. But there's clearly this key component around programming to make sure that it's accessible to everyone. So what does it take? I mean, your program is kind of solving for that very, very specific challenge, but what does it take and how do we do more of it?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. You can bring it close. Okay, sorry. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. So the one plug I'll make for maybe the niche sports is a little bit, I think there's research that says that if you're a tennis player, you live 10 years longer than if you live a sedentary lifestyle. So that's something we like to stick in there when we talk, and I'm sure fencing has something similar as well. So that's a nice thing. I think space, like you said, it's not if you build it, if you they will come. That does help, though. We have a facility in the South Bronx, the Carrie Leeds Center, which is in Crotona Park. And we sometimes do community programming there, and let's say the turnout is low, but it's really about the partnerships you have. So we have a partnership with the local 4-2 NYPD, and that helps. And I think hiring from the community is a big deal as well. I can't emphasize the importance of staff. I think one of the public programs that has been, I think, very successful, there's a DYCD program called Saturday Night Lights, which is the idea of Saturday nights to keep young people off the streets. And we are the only tennis program in the entire city. And it's nice. It's in the South Bronx, right? It's not in Flushing Meadow. It's not anywhere. It's not in a club. And there we have about close to 40 kids coming every Saturday night playing tennis in the South Bronx. So it can be done. But I think some of it is also when we're talking about, you have to actually go into the communities and get creative with creating space. And what I mean by that is, at least on the tennis side, what we do is we have mini nets, and we'll go into schools, after school programs. It's not just schoolyards. We'll transform a gym into like 3 courts in a row. We'll go into cafeterias. We've transformed classrooms as well. One of the sort of great underutilized assets of the city is, high schools that have sports facilities. Because I think people know that, I think in this room, you have jointly operated playgrounds, right? Which is their school playgrounds that are also administered by the parks. So you can have access to those. But then there's certain sort of recreation facilities that are only run by the school, which you have to sort of work school by school, custodian by custodian, deal by deal to sort of have access to. And if there's a way to standardize that, then you have greater access to sort of that the infrastructure, and then you can start deploying your staff and equipment to it and create more access in those communities as well.
Can I jump in on so Saturday Night Lights is obviously something that many of us know about, and it's a specific recreational program for young people on a Saturday night, right? Gives them the opportunity to be together, create community, and play a sport, whatever that sport may be. But I think that part of the solution is actually investing in programs that aren't that specific. So the idea that any after-school program could also or should also mandate a recreational component, a Beacon program, a Cornerstone program, things that we're already doing in the city of New York. And bringing it back from young people, we all serve young people and we love young people, have 4 in my house, love them, they're great. But also, our active older adults need a place to move around and be active and be together and create community. We took a group of seniors up to Albany yesterday, and that was a key component of what they shared with their elected officials. Like, we want to be together and we want to do a chair yoga class or a, Zumba aquatics if we can. And that creates that ability for them to, live better lives. But it's an easier way rather than, not that we're obviously advocating against any capital improvements or infrastructure investments, because we want those too. But there are things that already exist that wouldn't take that much of a lift for the city of New York or the state to also invest in smaller ways that'll allow us all to serve more.
Yeah, that's really helpful, Sharon. And Jordan, I want to actually bring you back in on this. Thinking about some of those programmatic solutions where the space exists. I did a survey of one last night with my 6-year-old or almost 6-year-old, who had to fill out the school survey. For DOE parents out there, fill them out, get them back. Your kids could win a pizza party. But. And so I was asking him for his opinion about some of the questions. It's mostly for parents, but there's some there that relate to the students. And I was kind of asking him what he thought. And one of the questions I asked him was sort of about, which is not in the school quality survey, but I asked him about, well, what do you think about, are there certain classes you have that could be better? What do you think could be improved? And he actually volunteered recess.
Right.
And I thought that was interesting, because he loves recess. But he really was like, no, it could be better. I said, what do you mean? What would make it better? His first comment, which maybe is an easy fix, was the chalk is always broken. So that's maybe a low-hanging fruit. But deeper than that, he was saying we don't get to spend enough time outside. We don't often enough kind of play, enough variety of kind of play and activities. And he even mentioned to me that sometimes he calls her the recess teacher. Sometimes the recess teacher is playing us videos on her phone. I'm not so sure that sounds like recess to me. So. I know, Jordan, you've actually been doing something to me that seems really innovative around how do we help schools make recess better? And I'd love to get your thoughts about that.
Well, yeah, definitely your son's school needs Asphalt Green to be running their recess program. But so Asphalt Green started a while ago a program called the Recess Enhancement Program. And in some ways, recess can be chaotic in many schools. It's in these small little concrete areas where kids will be bullied, kids won't have fun. I was telling you, it looks like Lord of the Flies if you're not careful. But Asphalt Green can come in, and we run a program based on this notion of fair play, where we run organized recess activities. It's kind of like Red Rover, but more advanced. We have a binder like that of 150 different activities, and the kids have a good time playing, they get movement, they get physical activity, but then they also come back ready to learn. The teachers get a break, the recess teacher gets a break, but the kids also feel good after they come back. When I used to work at the DOE and I worked in busing, we would sometimes say that busing can be one of the more important parts of the day. If you have an awful bus ride, how are you going to learn when you get to school? Similarly, if you have an awful recess experience, how are you going to get to learn? So again, it's not just the physical activity, but it's feeling mentally safe and prepared and ready to get back in the classroom.
Yeah, I love that example. And you're welcome. If you want to expand to Queens, we'd love to have you.
We're in all 5 boroughs. I think we're in the majority of the city council districts, so we'd love to talk about
that. All right, well, let's talk offline. Andrew, I want to bring you in on what to me seems like one of the great opportunities right now, which is, we have a new mayor, who is, among other things, a diehard Arsenal supporter, avid. I don't know if that's controversial in this room or folks or we get some woohoos, but, avid recreational soccer player. And as I think about the opportunity ahead, it strikes me that, harnessing or leveraging the mayor's predisposition to be passionate about soccer and about organized sports feels like an opportunity to connect the dots to more of the challenges that are front burner for this administration, from affordability to combating inequality. And you are at the epicenter of this in the South Bronx, with concentrated poverty, with, disparities in health outcomes, in educational outcomes. How is soccer part of the solution? And if so, what could we do to build on that?
Yeah, for sure. And shout out, I saw my friend from NYC Footy. That's where the mayor gets in and plays, or at least he did. And we're all, I think most of us youth folks, but I play soccer on Saturday mornings as well, and we try and find that space for pickup. So I think there's an aspect of how all New Yorkers, all adults need that space to play. So just to briefly highlight that. But I think to the South Bronx is one of the highest poverty rates in the whole country. There's among the recreational deserts, there's a lot of areas where there's not enough access to space. But to soccer, specifically, it's the world's game, and we're in the world city. We have kids, families from all over that come already with the sport as part of their blood, and it's especially in this World Cup year, it's a huge opportunity to take advantage of that. Over the past few years, especially, we've had a really influx of young people from a lot of different countries that come here with very little. They're trying to figure out, them and their families are trying to figure out how to make it. They might be living in shelters and have limited access to a range of different resources. But the one thing that a lot of young people that we work with now is they love soccer. They love having a ball at their feet. And that's the one way that they're able to connect with their peers, connect with the community, find joy when they might not otherwise have that at home or even in school. So I think with all due, I love one of the things we talk about, expanding interest. We work with kids that love soccer and how do we expand their interest into other things. So totally see fencing and tennis and swimming is all important there, but also we want to meet kids where they're at, and for so many of them, that's soccer. And so for our program, we serve a little almost 2,000 kids through all our programs, and we have wait lists for pretty much all our programs. We can't reach the number of youth that are interested based on space and resources and staffing and funding. But one area I'd say that we can set an example for others is using sports, for us in our case specifically soccer, as a way to connect young people with all the other resources that can benefit them. So in one of our core programs, the SPU Academy, youth come because they want to play in competitive soccer teams, but they do academic programs at least 2 days after school, and in the evenings we do a 5-week full-day summer program where they're in the classroom taking classes and then playing soccer in the afternoons and then doing field trips. Often our field trips are to city or state parks all over to give them that opportunity. We have 2 social workers on staff that are there to connect with them and their families with the resources they need. We provide immigration screenings to all of the youth in our program and give them access to families, managing about 100 immigration cases annually. We're recognized by the Office of Legal Access Programs to provide immigration services. We run a workforce development program that trains young adults. They'll do weekly job skill classes, and they get to get employed either as coaches on the field. They'll be assistant coaches through our program, work with young kids, or in a couple of other areas. We run a coffee shop, so they'll train as baristas, or they'll train and work with younger students in the classroom as tutors and organizing after-school programs. So it's a range of all these different services, but we're only able to reach youth because they're coming to us first because of their passion for soccer. So that's what brings them in. There's so much development we can do on the field for sure, and intrinsic value to the sport, but it's also about how we leverage that interest and connect them with all the other resources that our organization, that the city, that all these other great organizations have to offer.
Recreation's the front door, right? I think for many of us, or all of us, right? Recreation's the front door. They come to us because they want to swim or play basketball, or fence. But they build from there, right? So whether it's tutoring or access to legal services or access to home health care aids or whatever the other piece is, that sort of playful rec part allows them the opportunity to come in the door to begin with.
I mean, I think to Andrew's point, it's like, look, soccer is the world sport, and I think what separates often low-income kids from, let's say, middle-class kids is just choice. Right, it's just access to the exposure. A kid should be able to choose to play soccer or another sport. It shouldn't be the default, like, I don't know what fencing is. And I think that's what we're talking about, right? It's that if you have that flexibility, if you talk about if spaces are flexible, right? Meaning a space isn't only for one sport. That means that a young person then has exposure to different sports as well. And I think that's what it is. I mean, a kid gets exposed to fencing, may like, this is great. A kid might get exposed to tennis and say, I actually don't like it. I want to play soccer. But the thing is, they had the choice. They had the opportunity to choose. And that's what's often missing in the communities that we're serving.
If I can add quickly, yeah, 'cause one thing in soccer rooms only, they talk about when you get to like middle school, there's a big dropout and kids leaving soccer. And I like to say, well, I don't really care if they're leaving soccer. If they're going to another program, they're finding some other passion. And it could also be arts. It could be music, could be theater, something that might be happening in some of the rec centers as well. So there's all these different opportunities. We're just trying to find what is that passion for every young person to help them through into adulthood to become good citizens in our communities.
I think across the board, productive time spent is very important as a child. Idle hands. Idle hands. You don't want idle hands. But also sport can maximize that time. Yeah, it's not just about occupying time. It's how do you maximize that time to increase their capacity, build community, expose them to other options, resources.
Caitlin, I want to bring you in on this too. We haven't gotten your perspective yet. And I mean, obviously, as a a competitive swimmer, you have that first person experience of training in swimming. But also, this is clearly a life and death issue for New York. Where we've seen the consequences of the alarmingly high rates or low rates of New Yorkers who know how to swim. This is an area where the city's been making some progress. Maybe relative to the rest of the rec agenda, there's been much of the attention is kind of recently focused around swimming. So we know there's been some progress there. Jordan mentioned some of it, and you've obviously led some of it. But we also know that there's a long way to go. I mean, when it comes to kind of inequities in New York City around swimming and why that's so consequential in a city completely surrounded by water. So I'd love to get your thoughts about, where are we now when it comes to swimming? What's needed to move this forward? What are some of your ideas for advancing this in the new administration?
Thank you. That's a great question, and I have many partners in the room who we've been workshopping this over the years. And I have to say, with love, that I love New York City, but we need to create a culture of swimming. And just because you live in close proximity to the water doesn't mean you have safe access. And swimming is not something that can be done casually, at least not at first, right? You need infrastructure, pools, lifeguards, instructors. You need time and consistency. You need a system you can trust. You need cultural permission and relevance. And then you need a parent or a school that's going to open the door. And so without those components, we will continue to live near the water, but not in. And that's where the greatest risk comes out of it all. I think to really change this and shift the pendulum here, it's really a philosophical change that needs to happen. And it's that swimming needs to be looked at as the same way we look at seatbelts or fire drills. Basic safety education. And yep. And as much as it feels a little inorganic to say this, it's not a sport first. It's a life skill first. And then hopefully for many people, they find joy and they pursue the sport. I think it can't be said enough that there are so many more barriers to accessing the water safely than just whether or not we have a pool. The financial barriers are compounding. Even just, things that maybe you might not think about, but like if you have to put a down payment to get into a program or pay in advance, someone who doesn't have stable income can't chart that course out. It's just not reachable. If childcare or gear or other work is competing, like these things compound. And so kind of going back to the top about how recreation is upstream public health, it's something that as we invest and we continue to invest in it, I think we need to welcome in the other components that feed and get people to the centers. Some things that I'm noticing, on the ground that are working. I'm excited about the group Prospect Swims. For those who haven't heard about this organization yet, Prospect Park has a lake. It's polluted, to say the least, and it's an uphill battle. But at least we're having a conversation about what's possible with this waterway that's in an area with, a major pool desert. Or I look at the work that we're actually doing on the private side with Chelsea Piers, state-of-the-art rec center. We've all heard about it, seen it for years and years. They've partnered with nonprofits like Rising Tide so that we can serve our groups, which are Title I schools in the most vulnerable and at-risk populations, and making these state-of-the-art facilities available to us. Seeing these linkages all over town are what is going to create this chain reaction that we can all continue to build upon. And as my colleagues have highlighted, they're also doing that. This is amazing stuff, but it is just the beginning.
Can I jump in? First off, kudos and a shout out to Kate, who also sits on the New York State Commission to Prevent Childhood Drowning.
Thank you.
Long name, but real. So about 3 years ago, a bunch of us gathered and created the Task Force on Aquatics and Lifeguard in the city of New York. And so where to begin? We know that the infrastructure is important, but we also know that there's a lot of great work happening, and it wouldn't happen without partnership. So the key component to all of it is about that partnership with the city, with the state, between nonprofits and for-profits and our communities, and without that, none of it would happen. So it brings me joy to hear you say that that is something that, you know, people are talking about, right? The aquatics issues, the lifeguard shortage, all of those things, and no one would be talking about it without that seed partnership that we all have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we also have a pathway to getting it done. I mean, absolutely, this lifeguard task force, thank you, Sharon, for bringing everyone together, and Caitlin, for your amazing work. But again, this Wave Makers program that we did with all these great partners, we got $1.5 million grant, and with these other not-for-profit partners in the parks, for $1.5 million, we taught 3,000 kids to swim. So you can teach 1,000 kids to swim for $500,000. We estimate there are about 60,000 second graders in underserved communities in New York City. So $500,000 times 60,000 for $30 million, it's a lot of money, but it's also not insurmountable. The city could say, we're teaching every single second grader how to swim. If you're born in New York, if you go through our schools, you will learn how to swim. This is something that's achievable. You know, we could administer it, the YMCA will administer it, Common Point will administer it. We will need infrastructure, but there's also a path to getting this done.
Well, I'm encouraged by all of this work, and we see the progress that has been made, and obviously there's more to be done. And I guess I'd love to ask all of you as we move into the back half of our conversation for ideas and recommendations and things that we think that the new administration can do. I mean, again, I'm so struck by Mayor Mamdani, who is not just an avid soccer player, who trumpets his one of his proudest achievements, prior to government, was founding the first ever cricket club at Bronx Science. I mean, really the recreation thread goes way back. If the mayor or his team were to come to each of you and say, look, I'm passionate about this, I care about this, but what should I do? I'd love to hear some more of your ideas, big or small, or medium-sized, around advancing free public recreation in New York City. I mean, what are some of those things, whether it's programmatic or public space or even public-private partnerships or work that the Parks Department should be doing or doing in partnership with all of you? Would love to open it up for more of your ideas for where this administration should go with recreation.
Maybe I'll start. And I think the ideas I have are more like within government, so meaning it's easier to do. We do programs in the parks, and to do programs in the park, you need a permit. And there's a certain process to get a permit. And when you have the permit, the hours, that's when we can notify parents. The later you get the permit, the later you notify parents, the more difficult it is. It would be nice to have, let's say for the summer, if the city could say with certain partners, you have multi-year permits, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like maybe for 2 or 3 summers in a row, so you can plan accordingly, you can inform, that'll increase the numbers. Second is, I think I mentioned, one of the great sort of things to unlock is you have incredible sort of resources or facilities on high schools and public schools. How do you access those? Because they're not within the park department, and they're literally the domain of each school. Is there a way that systematically the city could say we could tap that? The last, that's what and the last one is and it's maybe a little bit of creative planning, and I know Sharon and our organizations are part of this Summer Rising. If people know this sort of came out of COVID, where the first half of the day for elementary, middle schools is sort of summer school. The second half of the day is nonprofit providers are in doing almost like a summer camp after school. That second half of the day could be more recreationally based, right? And that's just something the city has to decide how to sort of rejig it. But that's not rocket science, as opposed to saying you do X, you just do Y. and you have the resources, you could say, hey, we're going to make it so that you could take the bus to the local park and run a 3-hour program there. The childcare will be there, but you're increasing recreation as well. And all three things I've said, right, are within the city's control. You don't need extra private dollars. You don't need any like crazy MOUs. They just have to decide to do it.
Really great. And I would also add, there was a survey that was done of Summer Rising participants, and reviews of the academic component were not great. Reviews of the recreational components, the play components were great. And it really struck me that was so much what families and young people were actually saying that they wanted and needed. But yeah, Jordan, go ahead. I think I saw your hand
I
up.
was just going to say, well, certainly, as I just said, I'd probably first say, Mr. Mayor, for $30 million, we can have the funding to teach every second grader to swim, and over time, we'll get them every student will graduate learning how to swim. But then we need the infrastructure to do that. And we don't need just the infrastructure for swimming pools. We need infrastructure for soccer fields and for tennis courts and for fencing. As challenging it is to build new pools, I've learned it's even harder to build soccer fields because you can put a building on top of a pool. It's not as easy to put a building on top of a soccer field. Yesterday at our Asphalt Greens facility in Crown Heights, the governor came to give an announcement about her housing agenda, and we're joined by the mayor and several borough presidents. And part of the agenda is how do we streamline the building process so that we can more efficiently build? What if we viewed creating recreational facilities under the same guise as we do housing? We don't have enough housing, but we also don't have enough recreational facilities. What if this is a little wonky, but you asked me to be a little wonky. What if you exempted recreational facilities from FAR, or even gave bonus FAR for building a recreational facility? Or the permitting process. Is there a way to streamline the permitting process? Within DOE, we talked about parks, but also DOE is a great avenue. They have basketball courts. They have their own fields. But if you're a principal, you're already working 100 hours a week. You don't also want to be like a landlord figuring out how to permit things out. But at the same time, they have a lot of facilities that go underutilized. So thinking through all these different ways of putting them together, or in the city of Yes, it calls for all these 4 or 5 story buildings. Well, when you have a few of them together, why not put a soccer field on top of it? And that could be your green roof, and now you have more soccer fields. So I think it's kind of creatively thinking that like recreational building is like building housing.
Can I add to that? So one of the things that I think we talked about at a certain point was the other part of development is, yes, we're building buildings, and many of them require community benefit spaces. Why not encourage those spaces to be recreational spaces, as opposed to, perhaps another medical office, probably needed, but also why not a rec center or a small rec center?
I love those.
If I could just add, I think what would be tremendous, especially on the swimming side, is if there was some sort of synergy between parks assets like park pools and nonprofits being able to access those, because nonprofits have the community trust and the community relevance, and they can help fill the gap. Whether it be Team New York Aquatics, which is the largest adult lap swim, they're looking for pool time. There's an entire contingency, not just of young people, adults who are looking for pool time. These linkages would go a long way in filling the gap. And then I'd say the other thing is during the school day. That's when we remove barriers. It's not contingent upon a parent having the bandwidth or the water safety knowledge enough to know that this is important. It's in the school day. You're meeting children, young people where they're at. And so if wave makers and Swim for Life tell us anything, it's that it's possible. And when we look at our staffing shortages and this tremendous bottleneck that, as much as we all work together, is still there, we have to think about, okay, consistent programming year over year that's producing results. And results look like retention, kids coming back to the program, signing up for it semester over semester, and building upon those skills, because those are our future lifeguards and our future swim instructors that are going to help meet the needs and serve all New Yorkers.
Caitlin, thank you. Just building on these themes of, and I'm loving the ideas and the solutions you all are presenting. I'd love to kind of keep going. It strikes us that certainly one of the big challenges facing the administration is the city's budget. With a couple $2 billion to fill this year, and as much as 10 or more, in the out years, it's going to be challenging to make the case for new funding. As much as we know all the areas where it's desperately needed, perhaps one area of opportunity then is around deeper public-private partnerships, and all of you are doing versions of that. I guess I'd love to ask all of you, if we're going to make more progress on public recreation in this constrained budget environment, in addition to the call for more public investment in parks and rec and boosting rec funding as part of an overall strategy to increase investment in our parks, it also strikes us that there's so many other parts of the city's environment that are potentially homes for recreation, from NYCHA to streets and plazas all over New York City, but all of that requires a greater level of partnership than we have today. So I'd love to get your thoughts around both of those dimensions, recreation outside of our parks as well as within our parks, and what are some ideas to better leverage public-private partnerships in this moment to help advance this agenda?
Go ahead.
I have, in our experience at Peace, we exist because of a strong corporate partnership with Ernst & Young, where I was a consultant, and they sponsored my time so that I could build Peace internally. So I was basically an entrepreneur at EY, which was very helpful for us to build a team. They helped us with our RACI, our roles and all the job descriptions, accounting, every kind of support strategy, fundraising plan, so much of the outside and periphery of programming, which is, I think, as nonprofits, a lot of us, our thing is programming, but there's so much, the business side of a nonprofit is significant, and beyond significant, it's the whole system. And so EY, that kind of capacity building partnership, I think is very important. I've seen programs at Morgan Stanley where you can work with an employee there and on a specific project, and they also give some funding. So it's a nice kind of balance. But I've seen that type of capacity building partnership with a private partner is underutilized, and one that if there's people in the room who have that access or have those decisions to make, it's something that I can think could be really powerful. Also with space, not just government and municipal partnerships, but also with private real estate. So our space in Starrett City, we're only there because we can only afford it because it's subsidized through the owner. And he can receive a tax credit. But that's also relationships. It's building your network and all of those things. And I think, kind of to piggyback on the last question of what could the mayor potentially do, there is the Mayor's Office of Sports, Wellness, and Recreation, and there's so many segmented projects and ways to move this agenda forward that if there's one centralized place where these conversations are happening and can move it forward, that's not uncommon. A lot of countries and a lot of cities have ministries of sport, and that helps administer programming. So there's not just capital infrastructure, there's programming infrastructure with intention, with an agenda that's looping in all of the stakeholders, especially the nonprofit side. That's obviously that carries the heavy burden, to distribute. And to share sports, programming, recreation, youth development, period, because that's what we're talking about, youth development. And in a system where you have to pay, families have to pay, which is, we didn't specifically, I think there should be a moment where we talk about cost as a barrier to participating in sport, right? That's the number one. I don't think we explicitly said that, but cost is number one barrier to participating in sport. And not just a 4-week program, 8-week program, talking about sports on a continuum, right? Where you're doing high dosage amounts of sports over time. You're building skill in the sport, you're building skill in yourself. That's what sports are. And so there's no organized system, centralized system to do that. And so that's something between parks, between the schools, between the nonprofits, private partnerships. That's where we have a huge deficiency as a city. We're not organizing, coming together as a whole. So that's one thing. I also love the idea of rethinking physical education, because it's so, like you were saying, recess, and I've gone through the public school system. Recess, it's like kicking the ball, hanging with your friends, chit chat. It's very, in my experience and what I've seen, it's still, and from what I'm hearing, it's untapped time where you can bring in sports, you can bring in a sports sampling program, you can improve the recess time significantly, and that be a starting point for where kids are trying different sports, experiencing different sports they haven't seen before, and their only point of view on sport is not basketball, right? You can see and experience other things. So there's a lot of ways we can reshift how we think of recreation, where it's introduced, how we're not, spending exorbitant amounts that the budget doesn't have right now, or even put into a plan where we can spend that money. Another thing, nonprofits, the fundraising time of a nonprofit is just ridiculous, to be frank. And so how can we support nonprofits, especially smaller ones, so that, with funding, so that it's not taking up significant parts of their budget, because they exist to do the programming and to serve the communities that they've wanted to serve, not to fundraise. You can't be spending your 75% of your budget on raising money. That's not why we're here. So to address a lot of these issues, I think centralizing, some type of agency, which already exists but hasn't gone too far, would be helpful.
That's great. Thank you.
And I think in particular, and I agree with that a tight alignment between philanthropy, government, and not-for-profits. There are a lot of organizations like Asphalt Green where we take all of our net profit and our philanthropic dollars and give it into free programs. But if you look just a little ways down the road here, our Battery Park City location, it's owned by the Battery Park City Authority, leased to us. Philanthropists help support it, and we give out hundreds of older adult memberships every month. And there's a world where philanthropists will come. If we have the land to do it or the space to do it, philanthropists will help build it. And then programs like us, YMCA, JCCs, can help run this great recreational program.
There's the infrastructure that already also exists, right? We talk about the pools at the rec centers, but there are pools in high schools and other schools throughout the city that we can also access, and that goes for gymnasiums and the likes. If the mayor is looking for a partnership between nonprofits and the city to provide additional rec programs, those things exist. We just need more access. So whether it's making the permitting process easier or less expensive in some cases, because there are permitting fees, there's security fees, there are a variety of other fees involved in using city spaces often, it would allow us to raise the dollars needed to pay our staff and our teams and do that piece of it, but without having access to pay for access to space. It would change the game.
Yeah, in the winter time, I was saying, the accordion, what we do for our winter programs on Saturdays, which is free, it's Saturday, Sunday morning, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., and we rent space from private clubs, because that's when it's not competitive, and kids show up in the hundreds. And I think if there's a way to broker the deal on the private sector side, you can unlock some of these spaces as well. I think the other thing when you're talking about sort of recess as an untapped opportunity, other is sort of PE classes itself. So one of the things we do is we train PE teachers on how to teach tennis. And we give them the free equipment, and if they need support, we'll send a coach. But the other hook is that we give them free CTLE credit, right, that they need every year for their license. And so, as much as everyone loves tennis, we know it's also, you get a free meal, you get the equipment, and you get the free credit, and that also keeps the principal happy as well. But that's our way of saying, hey, bring it into the school environment during the school day. But now because the PE teacher says, I love tennis, okay, well, what do I do? How do I teach this? I need the equipment. So we show them how to do it. We show them how to teach large classes where the ratio isn't exactly 1-4, right? You got 20 or 30 plus kids. And I think there's ways you can get creative about what happens in the school day, including PE class.
And I think we need to hold the DOE accountable to making sure that kids are actually getting the amount of time that is prescribed for PE. Back in the day, not that long ago, there was a whole movement around PE for all. Everything was for all. But it's real. The idea that the state has regulations and there are actual numbers that the DOE is supposed to reach as it relates to the number of hours that kids are getting PE/rec. And that's just not happening. So it's another coalition for us, guys.
I also want to highlight, and I think Nzingo is getting to the challenges of fundraising and everything. We're relatively established organizations here. A lot of the permit holders and organizations are very small nonprofits and don't have a lot of those pieces figured out. So the more capacity support that can be given and communication, bringing everyone together, you mentioned the mayor at the beginning. The mayor's an amazing communicator. So how can he bring some of that to all the organizations that are utilizing the spaces, providing support for them to think about how can you make programs affordable? Because not all permit holders, it's not all free programs. A lot of them are charging quite a bit, and sometimes it's because that's the only way they can afford the coaching and all these other things. So if there's other capacity support that can come in to support them to make these programs more affordable. And then the other point I would make on kind of the communication piece is just strengthening the relationship between the city, between the Parks and Recreation Department and the organizations. It hasn't been recently, but years ago, we showed up to a field one day. There'd been a rut in the field for a long time that we wish they fixed. We showed up one day for our program on a Saturday. Hundreds of kids are ready to go, and there's fence going right through the middle of the field, right where we're going to lay everything down. And no one had ever communicated with us and let us know. And we had another time when 3 of the light poles were out. So our evening programming, and that's another thing, getting lights in the field to extend the day. But we would come out and half the field was dark and unsafe, and we'd have to call 311 many times, encourage families to call 311 rather than having that direct communication with the Parks Department. So I think there's also those things that are relatively easy, not cost, but strengthening communication between the department and all the organizations that use the space.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. I think we've run out of time for this amazing panel, but I want to thank you all, and our audience can join me in a round of applause for an amazing panel with so many great ideas. But please don't go anywhere, because we also know that there's going to be some amazing ideas out in this audience. So we have some time to hear from all of you. You're welcome to ask questions of our panelists. You're also very, very welcome and invited to share your ideas. And I will throw it over to my amazing colleague, John Sirico, who is our Senior Fellow for Climate and Opportunity and the co-author of our forthcoming recreation report. And John, take it away.
Thanks, everyone, for being here. My name is John Sirico. As Eli said, first off, let's just give another round of applause for this amazing panel. Frankly, the best part of this research for me is getting to learn all of your organizations. Like, you think you know every group in New York somehow, but then you learn like a million more. So just amazing, the work that you're all doing, seriously. So when we were coming up with this idea for this part of the section, I kept saying to Eli and John, like, we've been navigating snowbanks for like 2 weeks. We need something visual talking about rec. So before we kind of jump to ideas, we're just going to show some visuals of other cities that are inspiring us, because we're looking elsewhere for ideas. Okay. First up, Paris Plage. Paris Plage is a long-standing initiative in Paris to turn their waterways into places for recreation. This coming from the idea that you don't have to leave Paris to have access to water. 2 years ago, ahead of the 2024 Olympics, they added swimming as free recreation. And actually, I could just attest, this is actually a photo I took of the Canal Saint-Martin, and I can attest that it's safe and fun. I swam right after I took this photo, and it's open to all, completely free for all. And I think asking kind of a question, too, we are way more of a water city than Paris is. Can we be doing more? I love the shout out to Prospect Swims and the Swimmable Cities movement, because we have a lot more water than Paris does. Next up, Bogota Ciclovia. Every Sunday, over 75 miles of streets in Bogota closes to traffic and reopens to exactly what you're seeing: cycling, running, walking, all recreation focused. Directly inspired by this, New York City created Summer Streets, which recently was expanded to all 5 boroughs, which we love to see, but it only runs on 4 weekends of the entire year in July and August. So we're kind of asking in the report, can we do more with our streets to activate them for recreation? Next up, looking a little bit more stateside, a city not too far away, Philadelphia. We Walk Philly is a program between the Parks Department, the Health Department, and a local Parks Conservancy to do group-led programming and walks through parks and public spaces to get people out and talking to each other and building community. And I think this is a great one when we think about group programming. The Great Saunter, if folks know the shore walkers walking around Manhattan. Can we be doing more of this group programming? And then last but not least, this is one of my absolute favorites, Station Soccer in Atlanta at the West End MARTA station. This is a program between MARTA, the Atlanta's transit agency, and Soccer in the Streets, which is a nonprofit in Atlanta, to build soccer pitches near MARTA stations. They're very transit accessible, easy to get to. And as we think about upcoming transit projects like Interborough Express, Penn Access, these new projects that are coming, can we incorporate recreation in those planning? Because there's going to be all these new corridors that are going to exist. Now, question that I kind of put out to all of you that Eli already teed up. What's your idea to put the rec back in Parks and Rec? We'll be running around. I have a mic here, and with my colleague Sophie also has a mic there. I'll go first.
Andrew, I think it was you that mentioned that there's a potential wait list, or there is a wait list with your soccer program, and that's a good problem to have. My question is there an opportunity to have like a niche network where what are we doing with those kids who are idle on the wait list to get them to, be introduced to swimming or fencing or tennis with some of these other partners, maybe at a discounted rate or maybe at a trial rate so they can try a new sport while they're waiting to get back into soccer?
And then I think it's a great question and leads to more ideas for partnership here. We communicate with everyone, get our we have a community newsletter that they all get on, so we send out different resources to everyone to access, but good idea of how to kind of target or even share information with other programs for sure. Thank you.
Great, thanks for the idea. And just say, keep your hands up. Our colleagues will come to you with microphones. Let us know your name and just do keep your idea brief so we can get to as many hands as we can. And we see so many popping up.
Hi, Adrian Benepe. Thank you. That was fabulous. The whole thing was fabulous. When we conceived and started this idea of Swim for Life almost 25 years ago, in partnerships with Asphalt Green and the Y and other nonprofit providers, we understood two things. One, there are plenty of pools. Two, there are plenty of instructors. There are two things missing. The funding to fund all the instructors and perhaps sometimes rent the pools. But most important, and I think we are on the cusp of doing something no city in the world has ever done, which is making learning how not to drown mandatory in your schools. Fully funded, $30 million is a rounding error and a rounding error of the DOE budget. But that doesn't matter unless you make it mandatory part of the curriculum. And that was the missing piece. It was not even opt out. You had to opt in, get permission slips from everybody. So, I would argue that the single most important thing the city can do right now is teach kids how not to drown when confronted with deep water, because you could be Einstein, but if you die from not knowing how to swim, you haven't lived your life out. But also making it a mandatory part of the curriculum of DOE and becoming a global leader in that. That could be such a major equity move by this mayor. So that's just my comment.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Celeste Fry from Public Works Partners, and I just want to call out looking for partnerships with other city agencies. We've been working for several years with New York City DOT on their Bike the Block program, which is recreation in the streets. It's on the weekends. They're doing programs to teach local residents how to ride bikes. They've got partnerships with nonprofits, but they're also bringing in DJs and Zumba classes and all kinds of fun stuff to figure out how to get people out there, because I would argue that learning to ride a bike can also be a life skill. It may not, you might not die, but it can make a huge difference in your life.
Yep.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Hi, my name is Aminatsu Noah, and this is
Christian Perkins' mom.
So both of our boys died in 2024 in drowning at Reese Beach. This was my only son, and I'm now an advocate for swimming education. Mayor Adams also in May funded $5.5 million into the swimming program to expand swimming program for our youth in our Black and brown community, for all youths actually, because I feel like it's very important for our children to learn how to swim. Also, the Charlie Chisholm Center just opened in our community. I would like to know, how do Parks Department and Board of Education, whoever, can communicate with us in the community to get our youth children safe into these type of situation not happening to another family, because
we're parents that I was born in East Flatbush all my life, 50 odd years, and the change that we've seen between then till now, it's atrocious. We need more where our children that we're growing up can actually get into Chisholm and do things so that we can keep them off the street. We're the one that have to deal with this on a day-to-day basis. For example, like our children, went down and died together. We need to know how our children in the community can get into Chisholm for free, this is emotional, I'm very sorry, for free, and also learn how to swim, just like the gentleman said. It's mandatory. This is mandatory for our children, for all of our children.
Thank you guys thank you guys so much for listening to us.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much for sharing. For this group, it sounds like there's a lot of passion in really connecting the dots, and you guys all have your specialties. I think for me, as like a private citizen that wants to know how I can be of service, like what I do in my professional life right now is I help working parents as like an unofficial advisor. I kind of fill in the blank on all those like administrative little things that need to get done. And I feel like that's an idea that might be able to be helpful to nonprofits such as yours. I heard a few ideas about delegating like this mental load of like running a nonprofit, like the fundraising aspects, the permitting, getting to broker deals between these like private spaces and you. Like, are there like actionable administrative needs that can be delegated to like a private individual like myself that like basically works freelance for whoever, that, you know, would be helpful in this space?
Advocacy. Sorry. First, thank you. And just thank you. But that's the key to all of it, right? To some extent, the idea that if you're going to ask anyone in this room to do anything, it's about contacting your elected officials and telling them that the bill in Albany about making it mandatory should pass, right? Or that additional recreation centers should be built with pools and free swim and expansion of second grade swim and all of the things, so that the budget priorities that are supposed to, you know, reflect the beliefs of the people of the city of New York actually reflect those. So, sorry, I'm feeling it right now. But that is what it is about. It's about making your voice heard before all of these other things.
Also, I don't think volunteers was actually mentioned up here at all. And I think for so many people there, our organization relies on volunteers. We have almost 300 volunteers over the course of the year as coaches, as tutors, college prep mentors, all these different areas. So definitely, and we're looking for under 10 soccer coaches right now for our rec program in the spring. But I know NYC Service has opportunities posted for people to volunteer. There's organizations like Catch a Fire that are more maybe for like administrative or graphic design, other things. So not just Parks and Rec, but all different nonprofits could use a ton of volunteer engagement. So thanks for that question.
And just to sprinkle a little hope here, and thank you, Adrian, for everything you've done for the city and everything you continue to do. To your point, there is a bill that's being put forward. It's A1080, and it would mandate water safety education in the classroom. So please, if you can help advocate for that and help us get that across the finish line, that would be tremendous. And it will take all of our voices helping lift that bill up. So it's A1080, the Water Safety Education in Schools Act.
Yes.
A state bill, yes.
Alex McCon, thanks so much, everyone, for your thoughts and for the work you're doing. Shout out to Kate for the amazing stuff Rising Tides has been doing. Youth sports nationally is now a $40 billion industry, and it's becoming increasingly privatized. You know, private equity companies are buying up little league teams in the Midwest. What is the value proposition now to private philanthropists to be investing in our nonprofits rather than, you know, going and diversifying their portfolio by making a penny off of it?
So, maybe if I will, our Asphalt Green has a roughly $40 million budget. We give out over $10 million a year in free and subsidized programming. So operational gifts have a certain ROI to them. They automatic whatever you generate. If you give a philanthropic gift, if we can build a new or if you can a capital gift, that is, if you can build a new location, we can give out even more free programming in perpetuity. So I would make the argument to a philanthropist that if you're looking to promote mission, investing in capital of a facility like ours creates a great ROI forever.
And I think I think when you mentioned how much money is going into it, and I think we're both in the sports where money's maybe been historically a barrier to in participation. And I think honestly, it's, for philanthropy, it's just a question of equity. I mean, do you believe that kids should have access to these sports or not? Because the barrier of cost has gotten greater and greater. Like we provide free, tennis courts, equipment, coaching, but then you need a fitness coach if you want the D1 because you need to go on national tournaments. You need to do all this for the whole pathway of getting that college scholarship, right? And it just cost is more and more. So there is an ROI, and I don't disagree, right? But I think some of it is honestly just a question as a society of equity. Do we want all communities to have access to it? And that's just a question I think individual philanthropists have to answer.
Right. I think Goodwill is the, I think, one of the assets of that. I would also argue if you're investing in little league sports, like younger sports, they're going to get older and they're going to go to professional league, and the people who've had the most investment will get there. And when you're limiting that group to just people who have money, it's going to be a homogenous pool. And so I would make a case for the business case of diversity, of like you need to sustain viewership, to sustain mass interests and touch a lot of segments of society. You need a wide group of who's participating, even if it's at the younger age, because those are the people who are going to get to the professional. So I would pitch it as in a business case to diversify the group of who's getting to that point. It's important to invest in nonprofits and orgs that are serving underrepresented groups or lower income, if you want to put it in a business case, right?
Great, thank you.
Hi, my name's Rebecca Pryor. I'm the executive director at the Guardians of Flushing Bay, and I just want to make sure that we also call out more about boating. I really think the connection with what Caitlin's talking about, also with what Nzinga's talking about in terms of like niche sports, is related. I think a really important thing about our waterways is they're uniquely public spaces. Anyone can be on them. They are like public highways. You just have to get to them. And so there are several challenges to the like get to them part of things. But I think, so Guardians of Flushing Bay was started by a coalition of dragon boaters. Dragon boating is like a very popular sport in Queens and across the world. And it's like made up in Queens, it's, hundreds of elite athletes who compete globally. And there are lots of boating communities in New York, and a lot of those boating communities do have boathouses that they can access and store their boats. That's like the main piece of infrastructure you need, as well as like a bathroom and some water. This community is representative of one of several that is extremely diverse in all meanings of the word. It is socioeconomically diverse, it is multiracial, it is multi-generational. I was thinking I can think of dragon boaters who are 14 to 75, it's like a really wide range of folks who do this. And yet they don't have a boathouse. They have never had a boathouse, and the pier where they practice was condemned in 2024. And so they are just like one example of a community that's totally at a loss for access, even though there's a large, population who needs it. I think it's also important that they are representative of a story that's common in New York City, of a group that, recreates or wanted to get to the water or cares about the water in some way, and then formed an advocacy organization or supported an advocacy organization to take care of the water. So Guardians represents that. Newtown Creek Alliance is another one. Gowanus Canal Conservancy, Bronx River Alliance. These are all groups that formed kind of around that structure. So it's another important kind of connector between the recreation piece and then the advocacy piece. And then I think like the last piece of that for me is a really great case study thinking about, okay, what do we do? How do we do this? A great case study is the Bronx River Alliance. I mean, they, started their work in 1974, but a lot of it really picked up in 2000 with public-private partnership and a connection really made through the Partnerships for Parks Catalyst program at the time that helped to catalyze this transformation of the Bronx River. And they have a boathouse now, Bronx River House, which is this like amazing example of sustainable development. So we have the examples in New York City that we can pull from. The comprehensive waterfront plan that DCP did in 2020 is another great example of like ways that we can prioritize get downs to the water, of ways that we can prioritize different sort of like community spaces to get to the water. And so I think we have like the breadcrumbs. We just need to start like actually prioritizing and acting upon them.
I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. I'm gonna go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tamar. I work with Trust for Public Land. So 2 things. One is a pitch on behalf of Play Fair. Please join the coalition. It's a coalition of people who love parks and rec, and join us so that we can advocate with the mayor and the administration and everybody else to actually do all these things that you're talking about. The second thing that I want to just mention is one of the things that Trust for Public Land does is transform DOE schoolyards, and they are a really underutilized resource in the city. There's over 950 playgrounds across the city that are DOE owned. Most of them, those that weren't transformed under the Bloomberg era, are closed on after school times and on the weekends. We should open them. Gail Brewer has a bill to try and get them opened. Please advocate for the opening of the schools. It's a really marginal cost in custodial funding to get those schools open after school hours.
Well, I'm afraid that we don't have any time for other questions, but can you join me in giving a big hand to this amazing panel? Seriously, that was really fantastic. Thank you all. Thanks for being here. Thanks for speaking. Thanks to all of you for your amazing ideas and questions. I'm really sorry we couldn't get to more of them. I also want to just give a shout out. Can everybody join me in giving a big shout out to Cuff's staff? First to John Sirico and all of our team. We had lots of people that worked on our forthcoming recreation report, so stay tuned. We're actually going to make sure all of you receive a copy of that report in the coming weeks when we publish it. And hopefully we can build on a lot of these ideas with that report. Also to all the staff that if you've been to a Cuff event before or if this is your first one, you can see the energy and the optimism, the enthusiasm, and all the great ideas that are in the room when we have these events. So big thanks to our staff that puts these together. And to our amazing moderator, Eli, also. And I don't want to leave without saying another big thank you to the Helmsley Charitable Trust for their really great support for this event and for our report. So thanks for bearing with me, and thank you again for being here. Have a good day.